What a difference a year makes. This time, opening day last year, I was giving my initial remarks as majority leader to a largely empty chamber. And as I look around today, I think it's fantastic and wonderful to see all of my colleagues sitting here together.
It is nice to really recognize and appreciate the folks who have been working very, very hard in very different capacities to put our state in a better place.
For our state to transition from responding to COVID to living with COVID.
How do we address the problems that we've seen as parents and as children?
Prior to the pandemic, depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues were on the rise among young people. Post-pandemic, the mental health and well-being of the state's youth and families were a growing concern for Connecticut legislators.
And prioritizing funding so that we can immediately start to address all of the mental health needs for our children in so many different ways.
This should be and must be a bipartisan piece of legislation. Historic changes do not happen often when it is one-sided.
With adequate precautions in place, the 2022 session saw the public reopening of the state capitol to conduct the people's business.
There's a $100 million plus up on the oil company's tax because of this war. And I just think that while we didn't cause the problems, these are global issues. Inflation, high cost of gas. People are looking around the world right now and say, I didn't start this war. I didn't cause COVID to have an inflation crisis in this country, but I'm getting hit by this. And we are sitting here today to saying within the power that we have as state legislators and state government, we are doing something that will meaningfully reduce prices for people. And I think that's important.
In March, the House passed legislation that suspended the gas tax, enacted a sales tax week, and offered free bus service to give residents a tax break.
This is the opening salvo, and we have more to come.
The House also voted to expand eligibility for absentee ballots.
Work day in and day out to make sure our elections run efficiently.
And passed a bipartisan bill to protect reproductive rights in Connecticut.
In 1990, many in this chamber and advocates had the foresight to codify Roe v. Wade into state law.
Reproductive health care is legally protected here in the state of Connecticut.
With the end of session nearing, the House passed landmark legislation on children's mental health.
When we're talking about children's mental health, it's not about what we're spending, it's about what we're investing.
This is the most transformative piece of children's mental health legislation that they've seen in decades. I think that's really important. The people who are on the ground in the building, understanding what is taking place in the hospitals, in the communities, in the schools.
The amount of work and the detail they went into is really remarkable. I'm proud to be part of their caucus, to be able to stand up there today and watch them do this.
And it's not just this bill alone, right? The mental health bill that we're going to take up is very much connected to this issue. It's not just about crime, but it's about how young people have been traumatized by the pandemic and how that's manifesting itself in these kind of behaviors that result in crime.
Juvenile justice.
Let's not forget, Connecticut is the fourth safest state in the country. We had a precipitous drop in crime over the decade leading up to 2019, when most other states in the country did not. We had a spike in crime early in the pandemic, which has leveled off and started to fall if you look at crime stats through 2021 and 2022. Every juvenile justice reform this legislature has undertaken in the last 15 years has been broadly bipartisan.
Clean air and climate change.
We think it reflects a monumental shift in the public health, environmental future for the citizens of Connecticut. The electrification of our school fleets, of our transit fleets, this directly addresses what we see on the ground, which is an extraordinary increase in air pollution based on our transportation.
It's about environmental justice, it's about asthma, it's about mental health, and it is being led primarily by young people. And when I say young, I mean 13, 14-year-olds who are terrified for their future. And I think all of us are united in feeling that there is really a moral and economic justice imperative to listen to them.
We, as a state, we as a legislature have gotten our marching orders from the market and from the industry that we're not making any more internal combustion engines. And you can't just flip a switch, as I say, and go from that to electric vehicles.
We envision a phase-in approach to this, in which we allow for a number of years alternative fuels like biofuel, hydrogen to be utilized, but the goal is beginning in 2030 to be fully electric.
At midnight on the third to last day before the end of session, the House Democrats passed the largest tax cut in decades as part of the state budget.
The budget that is before us tonight is truly historic. In one calendar year, we will shave 12% off of our unfunded liability. Connecticut's economy is growing.
We are reducing property taxes. We're going to do a child tax credit. We're going to increase the EITC to record levels the way the governor did last year. We're going to cut the gas tax. But the first question is, well, what happens a year or two from now? We're not sacrificing fiscal discipline while we make these investments in early childhood or mental health. The rainy day fund will be untouched in full. Historic levels both as a dollar amount and as a percentage of the general fund. We are still putting over $2 billion, probably closer to $3 billion, in the pension funds, with a 10-to-1 return, creating $300 million in spending cap growth next year when the ARPA money comes off, and then we can backfill it to the general fund.
This is a budget that meets the moment, and we are all aware of the moment that we're in, coming out of a pandemic and knowing the significant and enormous need that is out there. It's important that we're making the investments that we've chosen to make in this budget. And we haven't talked about the traditional things that we always talk about when we pass a budget, but education continues to be funded, municipal aid continues to be funded. There's a bond bill that's going to continue to make investments in our capital needs.
Representative Rojas.
With that, I move we adjourn sine die.
The House adjourns sine die.